This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshido. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do. What's up, y'all? Adam Hoots here, the Lean Builder, Hoots on the Ground podcast, coming to you with no bullshido. And I'm going to continue to get outside of my comfort zone like I promised you earlier in the year. I'm going to do more solo episodes this year, so hold tight as we talk today a little bit about another way to develop capabilities, and that's of radical candor feedback. A lot of what I'm going to talk to you today about come from the book Radical Candor, How to Be a Kick-Ass Boss by Miss Kim Scott. This is one of my favorite books of all time. A lot of her YouTube stuff out there is fantastic. She's got a wonderful blog. Her social media is golden. We're going to talk a little bit today about the importance of feedback, about what is positive, what is negative feedback. And before we get going too far, I want to read some feedback from a fan. I got this just yesterday from somebody that says, I know I'm late to the game, but I was able to catch a few of your podcast episodes on the way to the project this morning. Good stuff, man. Keep spreading the lean gospel. So shout out to you. I love that. I appreciate that. That makes it all worth it, to be quite honest with you, because this is just something that we love to do. We love to change the industry. We love to improve construction, and we do that through radical candor feedback. So shout out for that love. Who knows? You like, love, subscribe to this podcast. I got 2 books. I might send one out. Just let me know if you're interested. Get a hold of me. As Coach Prime says, I'm not hard to find. Let's talk a little bit today about radical candor feedback. Let's define what that actually means. Radical candor is a philosophy of giving feedback in both an honest and kind way, giving direct, clear, and concise feedback, but also really caring about a person because they're a human being and caring about them in such a way that you want to make them a better person. This is really important because oftentimes we might care about somebody, but not actually give them the feedback that they need. Or sometimes we might not really care about somebody, but give them super direct, over the top feedback. Both of these scenarios can really throw us in a social dilemma. And Kim Scott talks about practicing radical candor feedback, where I care personally and I'm going to challenge people. Now, honesty and feedback in construction, super, super important. Feedback is essential for ensuring that the project is run smoothly and that they meet the needs of the client. But far too often, feedback is seen as negative or confrontational, which can also lead to resentment and mistrust among team members. This is where radical candor comes in. By using this philosophy, we can give feedback that is both honest and kind, which helps to build trust and improve communication. And we all know how I feel about trust. Trust is the most fundamental thing of building a team. Once you have trust, then you can experience healthy conflict that allows you to make commitments to each other that you can hold each other accountable to provide results. Patrick Lencioni taught us this. There's different quadrants when you get to radical candor feedback, and we're going to go over some of that today. We're going to go over why feedback is so important, why it's oftentimes looked at as negative or confrontational. And we're just really going to dive into this concept of feedback in general because it's really hard to give, super hard to receive. And quite honestly, it's the only thing that really actually makes us better. So hold tight as we get a little uncomfortable today talking about feedback. When I first read this book, I found it super interesting because one of the things that Miss Kim talks about is how counterintuitive it is, how society or culture has taught us against acting in a radical candor way. And what I mean by that is since about, 18 months old or so, you've always heard your parents say, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. Wrong, timeout, false, total bullshido. If you don't have something nice to say, ask yourself, is this going to be constructive and do I care about that person? If the answer is both yes, share that thing. You need to speak up and say what you have to say, or else you could be helping that person live in a false reality. You could be doing that person more injustice than you are if you would just tell them what's on your mind and what might or might not hurt their feelings. And so, as I take you through the stages of radical candor, I want you to think about caring personally. How much do you actually care? The other counterintuitive thing that you've often heard, and this happens about the time you turn 18 and you get your first like real professional job, or maybe some of you graduated college and now you've got your first professional job. The advice is be professional. Be professional. And at some point, be professional means you can't be a human being. It means you have to leave your feelings for humanity at home. And so we're not asking you to do that either, right? We're asking you to both care personally and challenge people directly. And what I'm going to do is I take you through these four quadrants is I'm going to actually show you Kim Scott's blog here, which is fantastic. And again, this is the framework. If you look on the vertical axis, you have care personally. I highly care personally, or I really don't care at all personally. And then there's this horizontal axis where we talk about challenging directly and then remaining silent, right? Do you live in this world where you care personally and you challenge directly any and everything that comes across your path? Consistency. And one of the things as I go through here and start describing some of these other quadrants, you're going to have a natural tendency to be like, oh, I know that guy, Jesse, he belongs in that obnoxious aggression. We cannot do that, right? We cannot put people in categories. We cannot put people in boxes because let me tell you, we've all been ruinous empathy. We've all experienced some manipulative insincerity. We've all lived in every one of these quadrants. I don't care who you are, you've been in one of these at one time or another. As we get going, again, radical candor is where we want to be. We want to live in this care personally and challenge directly. If we don't care personally about somebody, we don't care about them, but we're going to challenge them all the time. This is called obnoxious aggression. And we've been through this. Again, each one of us has maybe lived there a time or two, or maybe visited there a time or two. And I think it's important to note that sometimes this is known as the asshole quadrant. But again, we don't want to put names, we don't want to put people in these boxes. Just think about it. If you don't care about somebody, but you're continually challenging them, you're being a little obnoxiously aggressive. Now the other side of that, and I think this is where a lot of us fall into, is like, man, I really care about somebody personally, but I'm not really going to challenge them directly because it's going to get a little uncomfortable. And I don't really want to make waves. I just want to go with the flow. And this is important that we get out of this because the person that deserves the feedback is not getting the feedback that they need. Again, this can oftentimes lead to us living in this kind of false world. We can't really separate what we think is going on from what actually is happening. And so don't live in ruinous empathy with people. Some people will call that the enabler place, right? We've all been there, but let's not fall into that trap. And then the other one, which I don't really like talking a whole lot about because it's just, you've got to be a pretty insincere person in order to not care and not challenge somebody. Really, it's, I don't care that you exist as a human being and I'm not going to challenge you. That's really, you're just being manipulatively insincere. And that's where the backstabbing, the political, the passive aggressive behavior, that sort of thing, I think we see a lot of that in construction, but that's where that lives. So we've got to realize that we've all been in each one of these categories as we're delivering feedback. And so I encourage you to come from a place of radical candor. While acting like a jerk means you're still acting like a jerk. Radical candor feedback. Again, feedback is super, super hard to give, but it's even harder to receive. In fact, the only applicable response for anybody providing you any type of feedback whatsoever is thank you. It's, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. You should never try to defend yourself when receiving feedback. You should never try to justify yourself when you're receiving feedback. You should do just that. Receive your feedback and respond with a smile and a thank you. What you do with that feedback is up to you, right? It's when you start seeing the trend of feedback that suggests maybe I should do something about my behavior. Maybe I should act more like a professional, or maybe I should not speak up so much because I'm challenging too many people without caring about them. And so these are the things that you've really got to think about. How are you delivering feedback? How are you receiving feedback? There's other people. Marcus Buckingham is one. Mr. John Toops has turned me on to Marcus Buckingham. He talks about the feedback fallacy and using the right words when you're providing feedback, where you'd say, if I were doing that, I would, or let me tell you about an observation that I had. Again, making it less about the person, more about the interaction. Uh, I think we've got to change the way we look at feedback. We got to change our views on negative feedback, on what positive feedback is. To me, positive feedback is actionable. Can I take action on the feedback that you're providing to me? Or should I take action on that? This is what I look for when I get feedback from somebody. And then I tell them thank you and I register that. And then if I get too many files in the register, then I start to act on that feedback. That feedback, if it's positive feedback, then I do more of the thing. If it's improvement feedback, then I make things better moving forward. But I'm constantly changing and adapting to what I do. That's the PDCA effect. That's being lean. That's what lean builders do. Think about it. When we do the last planner system, what's the end result? It's feedback, right? That's what it's all about. How do we take that feedback and put it back into our plan so that we can feed the information forward? And that's what we look at with successful feedback. How do we use the information to improve our operations, our systems, our processes moving forward? Listen, the right feedback could really change the trajectory of your career, your organization, or even your industry. I encourage you to listen to the feedback that you're receiving around you, take action on the feedback that trends to be something that could change you for the better, and really just change your attitude and reception about feedback. Live in a world where you care personally about people and you challenge them directly. If my fly's down, let me know my fly is down. Don't go around and let me expose myself as I look like an idiot in front of more and more people. I'd rather just take the simple embarrassment in front of you than act like a fool in front of the whole world. So tell me when I don't have clothes on, when I act like the emperor with no clothes on, please tell me, because that's what lean builders do. We look out for one another when we act in a radically candid way to make sure people know that we care about them inside and outside the gate. And we constantly challenge people to get better. And yes, sometimes that means we do offend people, not our intentions, because we certainly care about people and we just want to make this world a better place. Until next time, coming at you, another solid book reference, another way you can actually use this radical candor feedback in the field, because that's what lean builders do.